Welcome back, folks, to another episode of Business from the Bass Boat on the Serious Angler Network. And guys, today, great show lined up. This one's going to be a little bit specific for folks maybe interested in where kind of lakes in the country that are getting hit by major tournament series, what those lakes are, maybe some thought process around, hey, maybe I should live in some of these areas if I'm trying to fish professionally one day. I've done this the last 2 years, so I did it in 2021 and in 2022. So this is the third year of it. So a pretty cool database now with Excel, which is again something I thought I'd never really do, but for tournament fishing, I guess it's like I kind of into this. So I have broke down all of the lakes in the country that are hit from a professional level standpoint. So it started at the top tier, the Bassmaster Elite Series, MLF Bass Pro Tour, and kind of worked my way down. Have a scoring system. We're going to go over all of that. But again, this is basically going to break down all places in the country, but we all know bass fishing is more so in the East on the national level. So I have a scoring system that I feel like is fairly reasonable with it all. And let's get into it if I can add it to the stream. Okay. Here we go. Hopefully you guys can see that okay. If you are listening in podcast, I'll do my best to explain how this breaks out. Essentially, this is an Excel file I've had it the last couple of years where I just go in and I have a scoring system and I go through the schedules generally in May of where tournament organizations are going. And I apply 2 points to any pro level tournament with an entry fee over, call it 2,500, three grand. I'm talking the $5,000 entry fees, the known top tier tournaments, Bassmaster Elite Series, MLF BPT, MLF Invitationals. I know that that's a qualifier for the BPT now, but it's still a $5,000 entry fee. The NPFL, that's another one that's like you can say what you want on pro versus not pro tournament series. It's still a $5,000 entry fee or around there. So it's an expensive entry fee. I think that deserves 2 points when you're talking tournament series because generally your earnings are higher when you win those events. Maybe you should put some more time in if you're trying to get to that level from a lake standpoint. And then from there down, I basically said, okay, we're going to do 1 point for what I'm considering semi-pro tournaments now. Same kind of thing. You can argue what you want with these. But I'm saying the Bassmaster Opens because that's an $1,800 or $2,000 entry fee roughly. That's a 1 point. MLF Toyota Series, similar entry fee. No, those are kind of more regional, but still $1,700 or $1,800 for an entry fee there. I do have the one Bass US Open, the Apex Tour, and the Bass Cat Shootout. Kind of those are Western tournaments that have that $1,500 to $2,000 range in there. So I put them on here. They aren't really going to affect the numbers from a national level. This is kind of more for myself and just looking at what I'm going to be fishing the next couple of years and where guys are going and try and get familiar with some of those lakes. I think it's a good way to spend some time on these things. I mean, I don't know, Bass U, Bailey actually in a Bassmaster Fantasy podcast we did the other day where he was talking about Mike Iaconelli talking about his practice strategy, and he's been pre-practicing all these lakes. And I think that it can hurt and help you. And I think in these situations, right, Miles Berghoff has talked about this concept of constantly going to living in places where major tournaments happen and getting good in those areas. It's interesting to see how things change, but one thing for sure is those northern lakes never seem to change. There's just not as many of those larger venues that Elite Series, BPT, Toyota Series go to. So there's kind of a consistency there, right, with the mainstay places. If you spend a lot of time on those places, they're probably going to get hit almost every year from a professional level tournament standpoint. So it's worth doing that, if that makes sense. And also, as much as data and graphing and everything kind of is playing a role, if you have those waypoints marked up north, rock piles, places where you feel like you can go back and catch them. I mean, rocks don't move, right? Like big boulders, they're never going to go anywhere. Sure, brush piles kind of need to be refreshened and disappear. And but like hard spots on river ledges and lakes, even in down south in the Tennessee River. And obviously that stuff's always changing, but you just kind of have a head up. Not to mention with all of this, the more time you spend in these places, the less decision making you have. Like if you know where the gas station is and you know where the ramp is and you know where you're probably going to stay, like those things all take up time in your decision making. As we know, like in tournament weeks, like gosh, it just blows my mind how, and maybe I need to be more efficient, but it's like those are like by the time you get off the water, you do tackle, you eat something like it's a 15 or 14 to 16-hour day, depending, if it's a in the summertime and it's long light hours, it's like there's just no time to think or to do anything. And to have some of that stuff already ironed out details, I think it's important. So let's get into kind of how I broke this down. There are 98 lakes on here. Some of these are these California lakes with, especially the Apex Tour, that are smaller. So I would say there's still probably like 80, honestly, 80, probably more like 85, 90 of these national lakes that are kind of hit in the last 7, 8 years. So I have this broke out from currently it's ranked in this last 3 years format, right? So we'll kind of go through what these lakes are, where they're kind of ranked, and then I have some notes on some of these that are interesting. So I don't know. I think this stuff's pretty interesting. I think it also you can look at places to maybe potentially live for a couple of years, as we're kind of seeing more and more of these situations where you don't necessarily have to be in one place, or jobs you can be on the road with, and those type of things. So um, first we'll go into what I think you should kind of look to the most, which is probably the points in the last 3 or the last 5 years, that system, because this is taking an average over the last 3 to 5 years, not an average, sorry. It's taking the amount of times that each of these places have been hit to, again, to that scoring schedule of 2 points if it's a pro tournament, 1 point if it is a semi-pro tournament. So 7th place has a bunch of ties here, but basically we've got, and look at that, California Delta's on there, but we've got Chickamauga in Tennessee. It really got hit hard in like the 2020, 2019. It kind of has come down a little bit. I know that place has been hit really, really hard, but that's still tied in 7th in the last 3 years. California Delta, that is being swayed by some of the Toyota Series Apex Tour events. Again, those are only 1 point each, though, and those have been hit quite a bit. So that's kind of really the only West Coast that has made it in here. I was surprised to see that. That's in 7th over the last 3 years for major national style tournaments, I'll call it. And then the Potomac River, that one seems to be a mainstay in that kind of like 7th range. Again, tied for 7th there, seems to always be hit, especially on the BPT, the Major League Fishing style of tournaments, right? Like it seems like there's always a Toyota Series there. There's always a invitational there, something related to that. So certainly a mainstay on that East Coast kind of a situation. Santee Cooper seems to get hit quite a bit. Got hit 4 times this year in itself, but basically over the last 3 years, it's still tied for 7th because in 2021 wasn't visited at all. Okay, Grand Lake, mainstay again. I mean, only going there once this year, and that's a Toyota Series, but that's in 6th now. We're in 6th place, tied over the last 3 years of lakes visited to from a national tournament level. And then Eufaula, Alabama, 6th as well. Lake of the Ozarks, this place was hit a bunch this year, it seemed like. Again, tied for 6th place there. Okeechobee, tied for 6th. This place was hit a ton this year. I mean, it was the number one, tied for the number one spot when it comes to 2023 in itself. It had 5 points awarded to it there. So 2 pro tours, so 2 plus 2, and then one regional tour event there. So quite a bit of activity on Okeechobee after seemingly only having one tournament there last year. And then now we're seeing all these big weights on Okeechobee. So fantastic. I'm sure that will continue just because Okeechobee seems to be on an up cycle right now. Good bags coming out of there. Also, just to backtrack a little bit here on 2023, well, we'll go into anomalies at the end, actually. Let's continue with our points here. So that's the last tied for 6th place. 5th place is Gunnersville, Alabama. No surprise there, right? Gunnersville's a mainstay. The Bass Pro Tour guys are there right now. Awesome tournament to see, and also to see Jacob Wall doing well with where things are currently. All right, tied for 4th, we've got Sam Rayburn in Texas. No surprise there. That one always seems to be high on the list. as well as Champlain in New York. So Lake Champlain, New York, Vermont border there, one of those mainstays up north. Definitely something that you probably need to get to if you're planning on fishing professionally at some point. Same with Rayburn. Pickwick, Alabama is third. Makes a lot of sense to me. Pickwick is also one of those that always seems to get hit. Like you've got that Gunnersville, Pickwick region, um, relatively. And then you have like Rayburn, Toledo, that kind of thing, which Toledo's not hit all the time. But anyways, and then you have like the New York and the Floridas. So third place overall the last 3 years of most visited to is Champlain, or I'm sorry, is Pickwick. Second place is Harris Chain of Lakes. So Florida, there's always something in Florida here in this top 10. Obviously, we saw Okeechobee earlier. Second right now is Harris Chain overall, and it really wasn't hit that hard in 2023. There's only 2 points there, and they were both semi-pro events, or what I'm calling semi-pro events, an Open and a Toyota Series. So only 2 points there, but in 2022 and 2021, 6 and 5 points. So a lot of activity always around the Harris Chain, and still has been in running forever. It seems like the number one place visited by professional and semi-professional tournament organization is the St. Lawrence River, Thousand Islands, New York, without a doubt. So up north, if you had to pick one place, that's the place to go if you're going to go spend time on your big motor graphing, go spend time trying to figure some of that stuff out, right? Always a mainstay. And not to mention, you're only 3 hours away from Champlain, so you might as well include that into the trip with that St. Lawrence River, but such a historic place. And if you look here, not just in the last 3 years, but the last 5 and the last 7, it's the most visited. It is always hit by professional organizations, no matter what. It is going to happen. So I thought that was not a big surprise, I guess, from the last couple of years of doing this, of seeing where that goes. And then you have the 5-year and the 7-year. Couple differences there, right? I mean, a lot of this data is going to be pretty similar, but in second, you've got a bunch of ties here. You've got that with Sam Rayburn. You've got Chickamauga as that second place finish. So a couple little differences when you take the data out back to 5 years. So over the last 5 years, right? So that's basically going to be 2018 through 2022 or 2023. And then when you go out to 7 years, stuff changes a little bit more too. So first, we still have St. Lawrence, of course. Then we have Sam Rayburn as second. And then you have a tie for Harris Chain and Champlain in third. So still, and Chickamauga is tied for third. But a lot of that stuff still pretty consistent if you look over the last 3, 5, and 7 years. So something to definitely consider are those, especially those top 5 places, 7 places, maybe. Like they just go to them. That's just, it is what it is. And I don't know. I like them. I don't like it, but I like it from some aspects, and I don't like the consistent sometimes. But it always is cool to see guys figure new stuff out on these things. And yeah, so a couple surprises in just the 2023 data. So this is just this year's tournaments that are hit. Obviously, a lot of this stuff still mimics the overall, and I don't think it's good to just look at 1 year's data because there's always kind of changes or some lake that's on an upswing, and it seems like all the leagues go there. And it's interesting. So one that was surprising was just Okeechobee, 5 points. So that's the leader when it comes to 2023. That is a ton of points when we're talking in 1 year. Okeechobee had that happen. That's due to, of course, 2 professional events going there and then 1 semi-professional event going there for what I'm considering those are. That one only had 1 visit last year from a semi-league from that standpoint. Kissimmee, I'm sorry, this is Eufaula, Oklahoma. Eufaula, Oklahoma's getting hammered this year after not really having events the last couple of years. Pretty incredible when you're talking. It's a really big fishery. A lot of Oklahoma guys know about it, and seems like there's still regional events there. But as far as these national regional or these high level pro events, it really hasn't been the case. So that was kind of an anomaly for 2023, like over the years, right? Like that's going to skew the data eventually, but it doesn't even come close to being in the last 3 years of points because it wasn't hit the last 2 years or 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 7 years. So next, kind of there's a bunch of ties for 4. So I'm not going to go through all of those. A lot of these still stay within our data, especially in those top 7 of things, but a couple of anomalies there as well. St. Clair, haven't been to St. Clair in a while. It looks like from a national tour standpoint, 2018 through 2021, there was a couple of visits, but two pro events there this year on St. Clair. I believe both a BPT and an Elite Series event. So an anomaly there. I like how they're going somewhere else up north. I think that's a cool deal. Neely Henry, same deal. Really hasn't been hit a bunch. Two pro style events on Neely Henry this year. So a lot of Neely Henry visits. And then Saginaw Bay, we saw the NPFL go here in 2022. So that's why there's 2 points in 2022 and then 4 points this year. So quite a bit of Saginaw Bay happening. I believe the BPT is going there as kind of a mix up north. So excited to see how that one pans out. But there's some stuff that's probably going to skew the data down the line. But gosh, if you're looking at this in the normal mainstay, I mean, those 5 or 6 places right there. I mean, gosh, you could even go down to Lake of the Ozarks, especially this year, seem to get after it pretty good. But these places are hit so often. So if you're kind of looking at maybe potentially being a pro someday, I don't think it's a bad idea to go fish some of these as a go drag your boat down there, go look at things. Eventually you're gonna hit those places in your pursuit to becoming a professional, or if you make it to that top tier pro level, it certainly will be a mainstay. So something to consider. Figured I would just throw this stuff out there, screenshot this, do whatever you need to kind of wrap your brain around this data. But figured it'd just be a breakdown, something interesting for myself to always look at. And hopefully it provides some value with everything. Would love to kind of think through on places to live next to all this stuff, right? I mean, like if you live in a place between the Thousand Islands and Champlain, like you got a lot of major level events that are eventually going to come up there if you can survive the rest of the season, if you do well in those places. Then same within Florida, right? Like Okeechobee, Harris Chain. You go down a little further, of course, there's St. John's and all these other places. So I don't know, something to consider and think through for your own tournament fishing. And maybe it doesn't matter at all. Maybe you're just curious of like, where do guys go? These are kind of the famous tournament lakes in the country. So, and of course, as we all know, there's plenty of other really good lakes that aren't talked about. But from a tournament perspective, these are the places that seem to be hit on an annual basis. And with that, folks, we're going to kind of wrap things up. Thanks for following along, as always, with everything that we've got going on the Serious Angler Network, including this show and our others. If you haven't checked out our Lure Lab show, or of course our Serious Angler show, You Live Under a Rock, check those out. They have more of a angler insight. We've kind of spread things out from a content standpoint and are trying to build this platform up really wide and tall at the same time. So would appreciate all of you guys liking, subscribing, anything like that to all these shows. Certainly appreciate it. And we will see you at the next one.